The day the laughter stopped, even the wind seemed to hold its breath. In Redwood Springs, nothing bad ever happened. That was what people said when they moved here. The kind of place where kids left their bikes lying on the front lawn overnight, and no one locked their doors. But that Tuesday morning, as the sun glinted off the red brick walls of Willow Creek Elementary, the kind of horror that only happens in big cities crept silently into this small town. Recess had just begun. The school bell rang out its cheerful clang, and 200 kids poured into the playground like a flood of untamed joy. Sneakers squeaked on blacktop, swings groaned, and laughter rang out. Pure, unfiltered laughter that could soften even the hardest heart. Among them were three inseparable second-grade girls, Sophie Daniels, with her bright red hair tied into pigtails, Paige Monroe, quiet and thoughtful, clutching her favorite rag doll, and Ellie Garcia, the free spirit of the trio, known for wearing mismatched socks and painting her backpack with rainbow doodles. They had promised each other, under the giant oak tree by the swings, that they'd always stay together, no matter what. What none of them knew was that within 30 minutes, that promise would be tested in the most terrifying way imaginable. Ranger, a retired German Shepherd K9, was watching from the chain-link fence bordering the playground. He belonged to Deputy Sam Carter, who often parked his patrol truck near the school while catching up on paperwork. Ranger was a legend in the county. For years, he had served as a bomb-sniffing, drug-tracking, criminal-chasing partner, until a bullet wound to his hind leg forced him into retirement. These days, Ranger's life was quieter, but his instincts never faded. As the kids played, he watched intently, his amber eyes scanning every detail. His ears twitched at sounds most people wouldn't even register. The metallic ping of a locker door slamming, the whir of the janitor's cart, the faint whisper of the wind as it carried scents across the yard. Something in the air felt off. Ranger didn't know why, but he growled softly, almost imperceptibly. By 10:30 a.m., the bell rang again, signaling the end of recess. Teachers began lining up the kids. Sam closed his notebook and whistled for Ranger, who jumped into the truck bed with his usual grace, tail thumping. Everything seemed normal, until the first scream. "Where are Sophie, Paige, and Ellie?" A teacher's voice cracked over the playground. Deputy Carter glanced up, heart pounding. He'd been on the job long enough to know the difference between a teacher yelling for attention and a teacher screaming out of fear. He jumped out of the truck. Ranger's ears shot up. Within minutes, chaos broke out. Teachers searched under the slides, behind the bushes, and inside the restrooms. Nothing. The three girls had simply vanished. The principal, Marla Jenkins, called for a lockdown. Parents were notified. The sheriff's office dispatched backup units, and the small-town calm that defined Redwood Springs shattered like glass. But Ranger wasn't waiting for orders. He leapt from the truck, nose to the ground, tracing every inch of the playground. He sniffed the swings, the slide, the blacktop, his tail stiff, his body tense. Then he stopped near the old wooden fence by the storage shed. Sam followed him. "What is it, buddy?" Ranger sniffed again, pawing the dirt. He let out a sharp bark, one of those short warning barks Sam knew all too well. Ranger had picked up a trail. The parents began arriving in a frenzy. Tom Daniels, Sophie's father, dropped everything at his auto repair shop and sprinted through the school gates, his face pale with dread. Laura Monroe, Paige's mother, clutched a photo of her daughter like it was a lifeline. And Ellie's grandmother, who raised her after her parents passed, broke down in tears the moment she heard the news. "They were here just minutes ago," Mrs. Jackson, the second-grade teacher, kept saying, as though repeating it might bring the girls back. Sam took control. We'll find them. We'll search every inch of this place. He trusted Ranger more than any deputy on his team. If anyone could find the girls, it was that dog. Ranger circled the fence again and froze. He sniffed the air, ears pinned forward. Sam noticed it too, a strange scent of motor oil mixed with sweat and something metallic. Ranger followed the scent trail along the fence line, stopping at a spot where the ground was disturbed. "Looks like someone climbed over here," Sam muttered. The canine barked once, sharp and insistent. He scratched the dirt, nose to the ground, then looked up at Sam with those piercing eyes. Sam grabbed his radio. "We've got a possible lead at the south fence. Bring backup." By noon, the school grounds had turned into a search grid. Officers combed the perimeter, while parents formed volunteer groups to check the woods. Helicopters from the county flew overhead, their blades chopping the silence into pieces. Ranger and Sam followed the scent beyond the fence line, through a patch of overgrown weeds and into a trail leading toward the old railroad tracks. The trail was faint, but Ranger didn't hesitate. Then, something unexpected. A small pink hair ribbon snagged on a thorn bush. Sam picked it up. It was Sophie's. "Good boy, Ranger," Sam whispered. "We've got a direction." By late afternoon, tension rippled through the town like a storm front. Local news crews gathered, their cameras capturing teary-eyed parents and frantic officers. The principal, Marla Jenkins, gave an emotional statement. "We are doing everything possible to find these girls. Our school is like a family, and right now, our hearts are broken." But Ranger wasn't convinced. He had caught her scent earlier when she walked by him, and for some reason, he'd growled softly, the way he did when something didn't sit right. It wasn't evidence, but Sam trusted Ranger's instincts. If you want to see how real-life heroes, like Ranger, make the impossible possible, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Heroes for Animals. These are stories of courage, instinct, and heart that you won't want to miss. As the sun dipped low, Ranger stopped suddenly near an old drainage grate behind the gymnasium. His hackles rose, and he barked fiercely, scratching at the concrete. "What is it?" Sam knelt down, peering into the darkness. The faintest trace of pink fabric was caught in the grate, a corner of what looked like Paige's backpack. Sam's chest tightened. "They were here," he murmured. Ranger whined softly, as though urging him to hurry. Sam radioed for the maintenance team to bring tools. Within minutes, they pried open the grate. The space below was empty, just a dark, musty tunnel. But Ranger didn't move. He sniffed the ground, then turned sharply toward the school's administrative wing. His nose was low, tail rigid. He was leading them somewhere nobody had thought to check. Inside the school, tension was palpable. The classrooms were silent, the halls eerily empty. Ranger led Sam past the principal's office. He stopped, growled low, and then scratched at the corner of the hallway that led to a locked supply room. "Marla, do you have the keys?" Sam asked, turning to the principal. Her hands trembled as she handed them over. "It's just cleaning supplies in there, but, of course, check if you need to." Sam slid the key into the lock, but before he could turn it, Ranger let out a deep, rumbling growl. Something on the other side of that door didn't feel right. When the supply closet door creaked open, every sound in the hallway seemed to vanish. Deputy Sam Carter stepped back as Ranger pushed forward, nose first. The old hinges groaned like they hadn't moved in years, though the janitor claimed he'd cleaned the closet just last week. Dust floated in slanted beams of sunlight from the narrow window nearby, and the smell of bleach and mildew clung to the air. But what caught Sam's attention wasn't what was inside. It was what wasn't. No cleaning cart, no mop, no vacuum, just a large wooden cabinet shoved against the back wall and an unsettling silence. Ranger sniffed around the floor, tail stiff, ears up. He let out a low whine and pawed the tiles. then stopped cold in front of the cabinet. His nose touched the floor. Then he lifted his head, looking directly at Sam. That look wasn't just a dog being curious. It was Ranger's "something happened here" look. Sam moved in slowly, flashlight in hand, and examined the floor. The linoleum tiles in front of the cabinet were scuffed more than the others, like it had been moved recently. He gave the wooden frame a tug. It didn't budge. But Ranger wasn't finished. He barked twice and scratched furiously at the cabinet's base. "All right, buddy, I hear you." Sam called over the janitor, Mr. Deeks, who arrived with keys and sweat already dripping down his neck. "This closet always been locked, Deeks?" Sam asked without taking his eyes off the cabinet. Deeks shrugged. "Sometimes. Principal Jenkins keeps the backup supplies in here. Old files, mostly." "Well," Sam said, stepping back, "time to take a look." The cabinet swung open with a metallic click. Inside were binders, folders, and old yearbooks stacked haphazardly. Nothing looked obviously suspicious until Ranger's nose nudged a small plastic lunchbox that had fallen behind the stacks. Bright pink, with tiny stickers of unicorns on it. Sam's breath caught in his throat. "Oh, God!" It had Sophie Daniels' name scrawled on the side in Sharpie. The school was supposed to be clean, thoroughly checked on day one. So why was one of the missing girls' lunchboxes hidden behind a cabinet in a locked closet no one had thought to search? Sam turned to Principal Jenkins, who had gone pale. "You said this closet was for supplies." I didn't know that was in there, I swear," she stammered. Ranger stared up at her for a long moment before turning back to the hallway. He was already on the move. Word of the discovery spread quickly through the building. Parents, volunteers, officers, everyone froze when they heard. For the first time, there was proof the girls had still been on campus after recess ended. Sam took Ranger outside, heart pounding. The dog's posture had changed, more alert, more focused, like he knew exactly what he was looking for now. As they circled the school's rear side again, Ranger stopped by the old garden shed. He sniffed the weeds around its base, then suddenly pulled Sam toward the corner, where two cement stepping stones lay uneven in the dirt. And there it was, a footprint, small, faint, pressed into a patch of soft soil near the shed's wall. Definitely a child's. Ranger sniffed once more and barked twice. Another footprint. And another. 3 sets, side by side, barely visible, but leading toward the old maintenance trail behind the school. A trail that no one had bothered to check, because it was overgrown and fenced off years ago. Sam radioed it in. "We've got fresh sign. 3 child-size prints behind the school shed. Possible direction of travel. Southwest Trail." A team mobilized immediately, but Sam held Ranger back. He had a different idea. There were 2 things Ranger trusted more than anything: his nose and the feel of the earth under his paws. And right now, both were telling him something was wrong. As search teams fanned out into the woods, Ranger led Sam not through the trail, but along the edge of the parking lot, to a section of broken fence line hidden by overgrown bushes. There, beneath a bent section of chain link, was a scrap of green fabric, a piece torn from a child's backpack. Sam's gut clenched. He recognized the color. Ellie's. Ranger nosed the fabric gently, then growled low, not aggressively but with a protective warning. Someone had taken them out this way. Not into the woods. Not into hiding. Into a vehicle. Sam examined the dirt carefully. Sure enough, shallow tire marks led away from the breach, into the gravel lot behind the maintenance building. No cameras, no witnesses, but Ranger had a scent, and that meant hope. Back at the sheriff's office, the situation had shifted. This was no longer a simple search and rescue. It was a criminal investigation. Sheriff Dougherty cleared the room and called a press conference. "We are treating this as an active abduction. The school is now a crime scene. If anyone in the community saw a vehicle parked near the maintenance trail or school property between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock a.m. on Tuesday, We urge you to come forward." Meanwhile, Ranger's nose led Sam to a second scent trail. This one wasn't from the girls. It was adult. A man. Strong cologne, oil and sweat. And it wasn't the janitor. When Ranger sniffed a sweater found near the staff lounge, he growled deep, again not at Deeks or a teacher. But when they passed by Principal Jenkins's office, he refused to go inside. Sam watched closely. Ranger didn't growl this time. He whimpered. It was different. Like he knew there was something in there, but he couldn't get to it, not yet. The next morning, new evidence came in. A woman named Trudy Simmons, who sold lemonade outside the local hardware store, told officers she saw a white van parked along the alley behind the school that Tuesday morning. "Didn't think much of it," she said, "until I saw this man pacing around it. Real nervous. He kept checking his watch." "Could you describe him?" Sam asked. "Tall, maybe 6'2", mid-40s, looked real greasy and mad." Trudy's description gave them a profile. With help from state investigators, they cross-referenced recent visitors to the school, construction crews, and known felons in the area. One name popped up: Rick Darnell, an unlicensed contractor known for shady deals, minor assault charges, and, worse, rumored connections to underground payday lenders. And guess who had recently approved a quiet renovation project for a back storage room? Principal Jenkins. Sam returned to the school alone that afternoon. The principal was out on medical leave pending questioning. The kids were dismissed early. The halls were still, except for the sound of Ranger's paws echoing down the tile. Sam unlocked the principal's office with a warrant in hand. Ranger entered slowly, sniffing each corner. He stopped by the desk drawer. Inside, tucked under folders and receipts, Sam found a set of handwritten payment logs. Monthly installments, increasing over time, marked with cash amounts. One name appeared repeatedly: R.D. Ranger pawed at the floor beneath the desk. Sam looked down. A tile panel was loose. He pried it open, and there, covered in dust and wedged into a hidden floor space, was a child's drawing. 3 girls, holding hands, standing in what looked like a dark room. Below the picture, written in big, uneven letters, "We heard yelling, then we hid." That night, Sam didn't sleep. He sat on the floor next to Ranger, going over every detail. Every thread led to one thing. The girls had seen something they weren't supposed to. Jenkins had panicked. Maybe Darnell had threatened her. Maybe she'd tried to cover it up. But those kids were still out there, and Ranger wasn't giving up. Not now. Not ever. In Redwood Springs, the morning sun usually brought comfort. It filtered softly through the maple trees, bathed the streets in golden light, and warmed the dew-soaked grass along neighborhood sidewalks. But not today. Today, the light felt harsh, exposing the cracks in a town that had always prided itself on being unbreakable. 3 girls were still missing, and a retired canine named Ranger had just uncovered something nobody else had dared to see. Deputy Sam Carter sat in his patrol truck, sipping black coffee gone cold. The photo of Sophie, Paige, and Ellie sat on the dashboard, 3 smiling girls with juice stains on their shirts and wind in their hair. He rubbed his eyes. He hadn't slept much. Ranger, curled in the back seat, lifted his head, sensing the tension in the air. His ears perked up. His tail gave one slow thump. "You ready, boy?" Sam asked. Ranger stood and gave a short, sharp bark. They were heading back to the school. The night before, a forensic tech had confirmed it. The drawing they found under the principal's office floorboard had been made by Sophie. Her handwriting, her favorite purple crayon, even a tiny smudge in the corner. Her telltale habit of dragging her palm across the paper. But what chilled Sam most were the words scribbled beneath the drawing: "We heard yelling, then we hid." If the girls had been hiding inside the school, then someone, maybe more than one person, had known they were there. So why had the building been declared clear? And why did Principal Marla Jenkins go out of her way to lock up a closet that supposedly hadn't been used in years. Sam didn't need answers from her. He had Ranger. They arrived before anyone else. The school was still technically closed for the investigation, so Sam used his master key to let them in. The familiar hallway smelled like pencil shavings and hand sanitizer, mixed with something heavier now. Fear. Suspicion. Ranger moved instantly, nose down, tail stiff. He didn't go toward the classroom wing or the cafeteria. He walked straight to the basement. Sam followed, flashlight in hand, careful with every step. The stairs creaked beneath his boots, echoing off the cement walls. The basement was mostly used for storage, extra desks, broken chairs, outdated textbooks. But Ranger walked right past all of that. He stopped at a rusted gray utility door tucked into a shadowed alcove. Sam frowned. That door wasn't on the blueprints. Ranger pawed at the bottom. He let out a low, urgent growl. Sam tried the handle. Locked. Not surprising. But what came next was... Ranger turned around, walked 5 feet to the left, and sat down beside an old breaker box. He scratched at the wall beneath it. Sam looked closely and realized the drywall was newer than the rest. A slight bump along the edge betrayed the outline of something hidden, a seam, barely visible. He drew his pocket knife and gently pried the corner. Behind it, a second door, thin, wooden, no handle, no markings. The kind of door someone builds not to be found. It took an hour to get a warrant and back up. Sheriff Dougherty himself showed up, grim-faced and silent. A locksmith worked the basement lock while a crime scene team set up lights and video equipment. Sam stayed with Ranger the entire time. The dog sat quietly beside the hidden door. Calm, watchful, ready. When the utility door finally creaked open, the smell hit first. Not rot, not death. Sweat, dust, fear. A single dim bulb flickered to life overhead. Inside was a narrow hallway lined with chipped concrete. Along the right side, a stack of broken desks and cracked filing cabinets. Along the left, a small metal cage, like something you'd see in an animal shelter. Inside that cage were 3 blankets, a half-empty juice pouch, and a stuffed rabbit missing one eye. Sam's heart cracked. That was Paige's. He remembered it from school orientation. She wouldn't let go of it even during roll call. They were kept here, Sam whispered. Ranger stepped forward and sniffed the cage. He let out a mournful whine and licked the stuffed rabbit once. The cage door wasn't locked, but it had been closed from the outside. No one said anything for a moment. The silence was too loud. Then the crime scene tech cleared his throat. We've got hair samples. Small, likely female. Tape residue near the base. Plastic zip ties left behind. Broken, not cut. Sam stepped out of the narrow space. His head was spinning. This wasn't just a hiding spot. It was a holding cell. Whoever had put the girls there had access, knowledge of the school's layout, and time to clean up most of the evidence. But not everything, and they'd made a mistake. Get me everything on construction, maintenance, janitorial work done here in the last 6 months, Sam said. The sheriff nodded. Already in motion. What about Jenkins? She's not talking, Dougherty said, lawyered up fast. But we've got her on suspicion of obstruction and misuse of funds. That's enough to hold her, for now. Ranger turned his head sharply and walked out of the hallway. He was on the move again. Upstairs in the staff lounge, Ranger stopped at the coat rack. One jacket, gray, stained, size XL, hung alone. Ranger sniffed it once, growled, then turned toward the trash bin in the corner. Sam opened the lid. Inside, fast food wrappers, receipts, and at the very bottom, a black work glove. He pulled it out carefully and held it in front of Ranger. The dog sniffed, growled deeper. Let's run it, Sam said. Fingerprints, scent, the works. Hours later, results came back. Fingerprint match. Rick Darnell. The same man tied to illegal loans. The same name in Jenkins's notebook. The same man seen pacing around a white van near the school days earlier. They had a suspect, but still no girls, until Ranger found the scent trail again, on the eastern edge of town, near the old train depot that hadn't been used in decades. Sam and a team arrived just before dusk. The depot looked like something out of an old western. Boarded windows, weeds growing through the tracks, rusted metal signs swinging in the wind. Ranger sniffed the ground. The concrete, the gravel. Then his tail stiffened. He bolted toward the back of the building, barking hard. Behind a stack of wooden pallets, they found something. A pair of sneakers, small, dirty, but unmistakably Ellie's. One still had a purple butterfly charm on the laces. Sam picked them up carefully. They were here. A noise echoed from inside the building. A thud, a scraping sound. Sam motioned to the team. Guns raised, flashlights on. They entered the building slowly, their boots crunching on broken glass. The sound came again, closer this time. And then, a scream. I frightened. Help us! They found the girls huddled behind a vending machine, shaking, eyes wide. Dirt smudged, scared, but alive. All three of them, Sophie, Paige, Ellie. Sam dropped to his knees. Ranger rushed in and began licking their hands, whining with relief. Sophie threw her arms around his neck and wouldn't let go. You found us, she whispered. You saved us. Rescue teams poured in. EMTs checked vitals. Blankets were wrapped tight. Parents were called. Tears flowed. The town that had been shattered for a week finally began to piece itself back together, starting with a bark and a paw print. Ranger didn't sit still, not yet. He walked the perimeter, back and forth, watching, guarding. Sam stood beside him and stared up at the sky, where the last light of evening faded behind the pines. Good work, partner, he said, his voice catching in his throat. Ranger licked his hand. The job wasn't over. Not until Rick Darnell was in cuffs. Not until every secret was dragged into the light. By the time Rick Darnell's face showed up on the statewide wanted bulletin, the entire town of Redwood Springs had already turned against him. Not that they'd ever liked the man. Rick was the kind of guy who left a sour taste in the air wherever he went. Greasy button-up shirts, scuffed work boots, a temper that boiled just beneath the surface. He called himself a contractor, but everyone knew he took jobs under the table, did half the work, and vanished before the ink dried on the receipt. Now, he wasn't just a con artist. He was the lead suspect in the abduction of 3 little girls. And somewhere out there, he was still free. Sam Carter stood on the porch of the girls' hospital room the next morning, arms crossed, eyes red from another sleepless night. The kids were stable, physically unharmed aside from scrapes, bruises, and exhaustion, but their stories painted a terrifying picture. Ellie said they'd been taken out through the maintenance trail behind the school, placed in the back of a white van, and told not to make a sound. Paige remembered Darnell's voice, low, angry, and repeating the words, "It wasn't supposed to go this far." Sophie said she'd seen Principal Jenkins talking to him just 2 days before the incident, behind the school dumpster. But none of them could remember exactly how they got out of the school. It was as if someone had hidden them inside and then passed them off. Ranger paced by the hallway, eyes focused, tail motionless. "Yeah, buddy," Sam whispered. "We're not done yet." Back at the sheriff's office, the task force was swarming. "We've got a confirmed sighting in Tiller County," said Officer Brianna Keller, pointing at a map spread out across the conference table. Darnell's van was caught on a gas station security cam, but the plates were missing. Still, same body, same dent above the rear bumper. Sheriff Dougherty leaned in. "How long ago?" 36 hours. Too long, too far. Sam scratched his jaw, mind racing. He's not gonna head for the border. He's too dumb to pull that off. And if he's got half a brain, he knows we're watching the highways. "He's gonna hole up somewhere," Dougherty said. "Someplace off-grid." Sam nodded. "And we know exactly the kind of place he likes." They started digging. Turns out Rick Darnell had a cousin, Dean Keller, who owned a run-down property near the Pine Flat Reservoir, 40 miles northeast. No utilities, no internet, no neighbors for miles. Bingo. Sam loaded Ranger into the truck and radioed for a 2-unit backup. He wasn't waiting for the full SWAT team. The longer they waited, the colder the trail got. They reached the property by dusk. It was exactly what they expected. A trailer sitting crooked on a slanted hill, surrounded by broken fencing, beer cans in the dirt, and a busted lawnmower rusting into the earth. The woods pressed in tight around the place, thick with pine needles and fog settling like smoke. No lights inside, no movement. But the moment Sam cracked the truck door open, Ranger snapped to attention. The growl started deep in his chest. He jumped out, nose to the ground, zigzagging toward the side of the trailer. Sam followed, hand on his weapon. And then Ranger stopped, right beneath the open bathroom window. Sam listened. A faint creak of floorboards. Movement inside. "Suspect confirmed," he whispered into the radio. "Hold perimeter. I'm going in." Sam moved in silently, stepping up onto the trailer's rickety porch. He gestured toward the door. Another officer moved around the back. "On 3. 1, 2. Boom!" The door swung open with a kick and a shout.
"Sheriff's Department! Hands where we can see them!"
The trailer was a wreck. Clothes on the floor, food wrappers, and cigarette burns on the counter. In the back room, someone was moving. Ranger tore down the hallway, barking furiously. Sam sprinted after him. There, Rick Darnell, caught mid-reach for something on a desk. Ranger lunged, grabbing his arm before he could grab the gun. Darnell howled in pain, collapsing to the floor, Ranger pinning him with practiced precision. "Don't move," Sam shouted, cuffs already out. It was over in 30 seconds. The arrest was clean, but the aftermath was anything but. Back at headquarters, Darnell didn't even try to deny he'd been involved. "It was supposed to be a scare," he muttered, a cold sweat on his forehead. "Just to rattle Jenkins, make her pay what she owed." "By kidnapping 3 kids?" Sam said, jaw clenched. "I didn't mean to take them. I showed up. She panicked. Said she had them locked in some closet. Said if I wanted to send a message, now was the time." Sam's stomach turned. "You're saying she gave them to you? She owed over 50 grand. I told her I'd been patient. She said the girls had overheard something about the money. She said if we got rid of them for a little while, made it look like they ran away or something, she could get the money together." "You expect us to believe that?" Sheriff Daugherty snapped. Darnell shrugged, a smirk twitching at the corner of his lip. "I expect you to know who really started this." The public fallout was explosive. Principal Jenkins was officially charged with conspiracy, endangering minors, fraud, and obstruction. Turns out the school renovation fund had been her personal piggy bank for nearly 2 years. She'd borrowed money from Darnell to cover her tracks after a surprise audit, then tried to hide the missing funds with fake contracts and backdated receipts. But when the girls accidentally witnessed one of her meetings with Darnell, she panicked. Instead of coming clean, she locked them in a hidden basement room, called Darnell, and tried to make the problem disappear. Literally. At the next town meeting, the gymnasium was packed. News crews lined the back walls. Parents sat clutching their children's hands. Some wept quietly. Others glared. Sam was there, sitting beside Ranger at the front row, both of them quiet but alert. The mayor took the podium. "This town nearly lost its heart last week, but thanks to the relentless work of our officers and to a dog who refused to stop looking, we found it again." The crowd stood in applause. Ranger lifted his head and wagged his tail once. That was enough. 3 days later, the girls returned to school. Their parents walked them up the sidewalk together, holding lunch boxes and new backpacks. Sophie turned and knelt beside Ranger, who waited patiently near the front steps. She hugged his neck and whispered something in his ear. Ranger didn't bark. He didn't move. But when she stood up, he nudged her hand gently with his nose, as if to say, "You're safe now." Later that week, Sam received a letter from the state's Office of Public Safety. Ranger was being nominated for the Medal of Valor, the highest honor a K-9 could receive. Sam didn't say much, just scratched behind Ranger's ears and tossed him a beef jerky strip. You earned it, partner. Ranger licked his lips and curled up at Sam's feet, content. But he hadn't done it for the medal. He'd done it for the kids. For Sophie, Paige, and Paige and Ellie. For the silence that lingered in the walls of that school. And for the voice that still cried out in the dark, asking someone to come find them. Someone had, and his name was Ranger. If you drove through Redwood Springs 2 weeks after the rescue, you'd never guess the town had come within inches of losing its soul. The farmers' market had reopened. The football team was back on the practice field. The coffee shop played its usual country hits on loop. Life, as it tends to do in small towns, was moving forward. But if you looked closely, past the smiles, past the school banners, and the front porch pumpkins, you'd notice the way people lingered a little longer when they hugged their kids goodbye. You'd notice the locked classroom doors that used to stay wide open, and the way the parents watched the front gate until the last bell rang. You'd also notice the German Shepherd sitting like a statue at the base of the school flagpole every morning. Ranger! He didn't need to be there anymore. His job was done. But somehow the town needed him there, and he knew it. Deputy Sam Carter had been getting more attention than he liked lately. Every day, someone dropped off a homemade pie, or a thank you card drawn by a kindergartner, or just a hug that came without warning. He appreciated it. But it wasn't why he'd joined the force. He wasn't used to being a hero. Ranger, on the other hand, seemed perfectly comfortable with the spotlight. Kids ran to him each morning, calling his name like he was a celebrity. Parents snapped photos. The school even made a banner with his face on it. Our protector, our hero, our friend. Sam was invited to speak at a town assembly. He hated public speaking, but he stood on the stage next to Ranger, holding a leash he no longer needed. "I didn't find those girls," Sam told the crowd. "He did." Ranger wagged his tail, head held high, and the auditorium erupted in cheers. Behind the scenes, though, the scars were still fresh. Sophie had started sleeping with the lights on. Paige couldn't step into a school restroom without her mom waiting outside the door. Ellie refused to go anywhere without her stuffed rabbit, even to the doctor's office. Their parents did their best to stay strong, but fear hung over their homes like a thundercloud. So the town organized something different, something healing. It started with an idea from Mrs. Wilkes, the school's longtime art teacher. She knew the girls weren't ready to talk to therapists, or even to each other, about what they'd been through. So she pulled out a stack of large blank canvases and invited all 3 girls and a few trusted classmates to come after school for a special project. No rules, no expectations, just paint. At first, they barely touched the brushes. Sophie sat for 20 minutes, just staring at the white canvas. Paige drew a single blue dot and stopped. Ellie dipped her fingers in green paint and pressed them to the edge, like leaves growing along the border. But something shifted over time. They came back the next day, and the next, and little by little the images emerged. Trees, stars, faces with bright eyes. Words like safe, home, and together. In one painting, there was a giant dog standing on a hill. His shadow stretched across the ground below him, and 3 small girls running toward him, smiling. Mrs. Wilkes framed that one and hung it in the main hallway. It was titled simply, Found. Meanwhile, Ranger received his Medal of Valor in a small ceremony at the sheriff's department. A local reporter came from the state capitol to cover it. "Does he know he's a hero?" she asked Sam, crouching beside Ranger for a photo. Sam smiled. "He knows when people feel safe. That's what matters to him." The reporter chuckled. "Think he'll come out of retirement now?" Sam glanced down at Ranger, who was busy licking a toddler's fingers after she dropped part of her cookie. "He's working full-time already," Sam said. Ranger's impact went beyond the schoolyard. That month, donations poured into the county's K-9 search and rescue program. People who had never given a dime to public safety were now writing checks, donating crates, and offering land for training exercises. In honor of Ranger, the sheriff's department committed to bringing on 2 new K-9 officers, naming one of the puppies Valor. Ranger even got a new badge, custom-made, gold-plated, with his name engraved in bold letters. Sam clipped it to Ranger's vest and patted his side. "Not bad for an old man, huh?" Ranger thumped his tail once, as if to say, "You're not done with me yet." One Sunday afternoon, the girls and their families invited Sam and Ranger to a cookout at the Monroe farm. It was warm, late fall, the kind of day where the air smells like bonfires and apple cider. The fields had just been harvested, and the long grass glowed orange in the sunset. Ranger roamed freely, flopping beneath picnic tables, stealing dropped hot dogs and licking sticky fingers. Sam sat on the porch with Ellie's grandfather, sipping lemonade and watching the kids play. Sophie had finally laughed again. Paige was chasing fireflies with her brother. Ellie, wild and free as ever, ran across the field shouting, "Come on, Ranger! Race me!" The dog stood, gave a slow stretch, then galloped after her with surprising speed. They disappeared behind the tall grass for a second. Then Ellie's voice rang out, breathless with joy. "He beat me! He won!" Sam smiled, his chest tightening, not with sorrow this time, but with something softer. Relief, gratitude, healing. Later that night, after the fireflies faded and the stars filled the sky, Sophie curled up next to Ranger and laid her head on his back. "You're not just a hero," she whispered. "You're our forever dog." Sam overheard and blinked hard against the tears that came without warning. Some things are too big for words. In the weeks that followed, the town added new fencing around the school's perimeter. A security system was installed, and all staff were required to undergo new background checks and crisis training. Principal Jenkins remained behind bars, awaiting trial. Rick Darnell faced over a dozen federal charges. And life continued, slowly. Better, because that's what towns like Redwood Springs do. They mourn, they remember, and they rebuild. Brick by brick, breath by breath. And sometimes they do it with a dog at their side. By Thanksgiving, Ranger was a household name. Kids wrote him letters. Church groups knitted him blankets. One boy even wrote a song called "Ranger the Brave" and performed it at the community potluck. The chorus went, "He sniffs, he finds, he saves the day, with courage that won't walk away. He's the hero that doesn't wear a cape. He's the dog who made our world feel safe." People cried. Sam didn't say much, but that night, he let Ranger sleep in his bed for the first time. "Just for tonight," he mumbled. But Ranger knew better. And so, the dog who never gave up became the heartbeat of a town that almost lost its own. He didn't wear a badge on his chest. He didn't speak a word. But when the children of Redwood Springs walked into school each morning and saw him waiting faithfully near the doors, they knew they'd never be alone again. Winter came quietly to Redwood Springs. Snow dusted the rooftops and pine trees like powdered sugar. Christmas lights flickered in windows, and the smell of cinnamon and wood smoke drifted through the air. Kids built snowmen on the school lawn. The town had started to breathe again. But some stories don't end just because the calendar flips. And some heroes? They never stop watching. Ranger still came to school every day, rain or shine, snow or wind. He sat beneath the flagpole, tail sweeping gently across the concrete. His eyes followed every movement, students, staff, delivery vans, even squirrels. The badge on his vest sparkled in the morning light, and kids called his name with joy, like he was their own. And maybe he was. Sam Carter had almost settled back into routine. Morning patrols, paperwork, coffee, strong enough to melt paint. But something about Ranger's behavior lately had been different. Not bad, just quieter. More intense. He watched people more carefully, followed Sam around the house at night. Sometimes he'd sit by the front door for hours, just listening. One Friday afternoon, Ranger refused to get into the patrol truck after school. He sat by the loading dock behind the gym, ears perked, staring at the old equipment shed. "Come on, partner," Sam said, patting the seat. "Day's done." But Ranger didn't budge. Instead, he barked. Once, sharp, direct. Sam frowned. He followed Ranger's gaze toward the shed. It hadn't been used in years, since before the girl's abduction. Just full of broken cones and deflated kickballs. "Let's check it out," he said. The door creaked open. Cold air hit Sam's face. Dust danced in the sunlight that cut through broken windows. It looked the same as always, but Ranger walked straight to the back corner, past the clutter. He sniffed along the baseboard, then he pawed at the floor. Sam moved a few boxes out of the way. That's when he saw it, a small trap door, no more than 3 feet wide, covered in old gym mats. "What the hell?" He knelt down, pried it open, and aimed his flashlight into the dark. A wooden ladder led down into a space no one had mentioned during the school inspections. He radioed the sheriff. "We've got something. Old crawl space. Looks like it was sealed years ago." When backup arrived, Sam climbed down first. The space was narrow, musty. Pipes ran overhead. Rat droppings littered the corners. But the real shock was what they found taped to one of the beams. A security camera. Dead, disconnected. And next to it, a pile of boxes marked Maintenance Archives 2012 to 2015. Inside, stacks of old notebooks, teacher evaluations, and janitorial logs. At first, it didn't seem important, until they opened a folder labeled Substitute Clearance, Jenkins M. Inside was a copy of a background check, with a large red stamp across it. Denied. Sam's heart dropped. Principal Jenkins, beloved educator, community leader, fundraiser, had never been fully cleared to work in the district. Her initial application had been rejected due to suspicious financial activity linked to her previous job in another county. But somehow, she got in anyway. Someone had buried it. The sheriff's office launched a full review. Turns out, an old administrator, now long retired, had manually overridden the denial and pushed Jenkins's paperwork through. The motive? Unknown. But the result was clear. The town had trusted someone who should never have been allowed near children. And somehow, Ranger knew something still wasn't right. That night, Sam stood in his kitchen staring at the documents spread across his table. Ranger lay nearby, eyes open, quietly watching him. "You felt it, didn't you?" Sam said softly. Ranger's tail thumped once. Sam ran a hand through his hair. "She almost got away with it. Even after all this? Even with Darnell locked up? If you hadn't stopped at that shed..." He couldn't finish the thought. Ranger stood, walked over, and rested his head against Sam's knee. They sat like that for a long time. The next morning, Sam spoke to the school board. The town gathered in the cafeteria, packed shoulder to shoulder. Parents, teachers, seniors who'd never had kids but came because they cared. Sam stood at the podium with Ranger by his side. He held up the folder. "This," he said, "was almost missed." He explained everything. The hidden space, the sealed files, the denied clearance. How someone had looked the other way. How it nearly cost them everything. "But one dog," he said, voice steady, "wouldn't let it go." He looked down at Ranger, who sat proudly in front of the crowd. "I don't know what made him stay behind that day, but he led me to something no one else had noticed. Again." The crowd stood in silence. Then applause broke out, loud, thunderous, heartfelt. That week, the school made it official. Ranger was awarded the honorary title of Guardian of Redwood Springs Elementary. They built a statue of him at the front gate. Ears up, eyes alert, chest proud. Kids painted tiles to form the base. Little paw prints, hand prints, and messages like, "Thank you, Ranger," and "You saved us." Sophie painted a heart with his name inside it. Ellie wrote, "You're my best friend." Paige added one word, "safe." The town didn't just move on, it grew stronger. Security systems were upgraded, hiring policies revised. The school board opened a public review of all past administrative decisions. For the first time in decades, people asked hard questions and demanded answers. And they always came back to one truth. One dog had seen what no one else could. One dog had listened when silence was all the children had left. One dog had refused to give up. Sam still took Ranger on patrol some days, but most mornings Ranger preferred to return to the school. He'd sit beside the statue, watching the kids arrive, tail thumping whenever someone waved. He didn't need orders anymore. He had his purpose, and everyone knew that as long as Ranger was there, nothing like that would ever happen again. On the last day before winter break, the school held an assembly in Ranger's honor. The gym was filled with music, laughter, and the sound of hundreds of sneakers squeaking on the hardwood floor. One by one, students came up to read poems, say thank you, or give him treats. At the very end, Sophie, Paige, and Ellie stood together holding a hand-painted sign. It read, "He found us when no one else could." And beneath that, "Thank you, Ranger. Thank you so much for following Ranger's journey with us." This story wasn't just about a missing persons case. It was about trust, about instincts, about one dog who taught an entire town what it means to stand watch, to never give up, and to fight for what's right. Now, we want to hear from you. What part of Ranger's story moved you the most? Have you ever known a dog, or any animal, who changed your life in a profound way? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe to Heroes for Animals, and share this story with someone who needs to believe in heroes again. Until next time, stay safe, stay kind, and remember, sometimes the best detectives walk on four paws.